But I think what I don't want our listeners to miss about what Mark's talking about here is he would gain knowledge. You would gain knowledge, and then you wouldn't just go ask questions to seek wisdom from outside, from your outer circle. You would actually then get in the trenches. You would learn, and you would sweat. You gained wisdom from that. But then the way you pose the question to those that are wise in your eyes would then 10x your wisdom in that situation. So I love how you unpack that. I just don't want our listeners to miss what Mark's saying here, because in today's age, there's a lot of resources out there for people to gain knowledge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people gaining a lot of information without doing anything with it. And so you're saying, no. Get the knowledge, get in the trenches, lead, learn, whatever it might be, sweat, cry, all that stuff. And then talk about your experiences in posing the question to people that you seem that you look at as wise, and then it'll 10x your wisdom. Absolutely love that.
Well, and I'm gonna throw it to you for just a moment, because you made a couple of great comments. A couple of them were cute. You can even share the cute ones. But you had a couple of comments before we started recording today about how social media has impacted the landscape of wisdom. Yeah. And it was so good that I think it bears repeating. So just spoof off of that just a moment of how social media has impacted wisdom.
Yeah, I think my comment was, Jake and our team, they go back and they pull lessons from John. And that's what that lesson was today. And I told our team, I said, never more relevant is a conversation about this wisdom and where we're at with what we're dealing with in social media today. Mm-hmm. And there are people that have a lot of knowledge, and it's dangerous, and they're out, they don't have any experience in it, but they have knowledge, and so they're out saying things that they have no right to even be saying. And then John talked on here, there's lots of means but little meaning. Now, my little cute comment, which, listen, I'm 6'4", 250 pounds. I'm almost a 50-year-old male, and I don't like to be called cute except for by Mark Cole. That's another subject. So just don't, if you see me, just don't come up to me and say, you're so cute.
You're so cute. That's right.
But my thing was, there are lots of memes out there. There's lots of these images out there, but what do they really mean?
Yeah.
Right? And so I just think, man, that's a message right now for us as leaders and as people of influence to understand.
Yeah. I think this world of Twitter, where John really started issuing quotes and then people come across statements and they repost, I think all of those are great. But when you see those and you repost or you see somebody post those, I think the bigger question is where has that been applied? Mm. And I'm sitting here in studio, and again, I hope all of you join us on YouTube at some point. We love to have you here in this community. But I'm holding up the book, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And what's humorous about this book is John has updated and modified a couple of laws at the 10th edition. In this edition, John has changed some of the stories. But by and large, when you hold a book that still to this day, 8 to 10 to 12,000 copies of this a month is being sold, you realize this wasn't just something wonderful to say in a tweet 25 years ago because Twitter wasn't available.
Right.
This wasn't something to post on Instagram 25 years ago. It stood the test of time. And my concern is our social media instant access content in a bite-sized nugget is dumbing down the wisdom of just applied leadership experience. And so I hold this book today, not because we're going to give you a promotional 15% discount, although we will. I hold this because anytime you've got a book or an idea or a life lesson that can stand the test of time and that can inspire others to begin testing time, there you have wisdom between the covers, between the book covers. You have wisdom that actually will inspire a leadership depth that will extend beyond knowledge. And you made a statement, and maybe we can go here just a little bit, but this idea that wisdom in the right time, this knowledge in a right time is a difference maker in how we turn knowledge into wisdom.
Yeah, I want to, one of the things I asked Mark as we were getting ready to start it, I said, man, listen, there's a a communication deficit out there as we are growing and learning as leaders. And in order for us to continue to experience and become wise as a wise leader, there's things that we can look at in all areas of our leadership. But one of the things I was talking to Mark about, and I wanted to learn more from him, is I was saying knowledge is knowing what to say, but wisdom as a leader, somebody with influence, and that's how we define that here, is knowing how and when
right.
to say something. And I've seen you do this to where we've had conversations actually about, hey, sometimes you have to deliver a message with, hey, here's how we're going to do it. Sometimes you have to deliver it of, here's why we're doing it. So there is that whole process of how you deliver it. But there's also a timing thing, and that comes with wisdom, and you gain wisdom from that.
Yep.
And as a leader, especially at your level as a CEO, talk just a little bit about, man, there are things that you know with knowledge, but it's not the wisest thing to say until it's the right time to say that. How do you go about figuring out the timing of that and when to share what? Because that truly is wisdom in communication.
So I believe eatership. Wow, guys, this is the Eatership podcast. Makes me hungry.
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. I believe the art of leadership is really as important as the skill of leadership. And when you get into things like intuition and timing, I think you're into a concept of what I call the art of leadership. Yeah. And so let's talk about this art of leadership. I love Max Dupree's quote. I've quoted on this podcast multiple times. Leadership is about disappointing people at the rate they can stand. Yeah. And really what that is talking about as leaders, if we see more and we see before, and John says real transformational leaders see more and they see before. In fact, he goes on a step further, as only John can do, and says they see more, and more before. Yeah. And if leaders really see more before, then there is a responsibility to seeing things that others can't see. And I can tell you, Chris, as a member of our leadership team, what I see. But if I tell you when you can't see it, and I distract you from what you can see, I have a responsibility for your ineffectiveness for the next week while you're trying to lift your vision if it's not time to lift your vision.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, leaders, especially visionary leaders, opportunistic leaders, as John has mentored me to be, we see all these opportunities and we come home and we say, guys, there's another opportunity. There's another opportunity. Oh my gosh, there's an opportunity. And we go and we challenge our team from being able to focus on their responsibility and anticipation of them seeing the opportunity, and then we don't hold ourselves responsible for their ineffectiveness at their responsibility.
That's good.
So I want to share with my team the opportunities that I see, but when I share it, I am just as responsible to as what I share.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, so many leaders just come and blurt it out, create chaos, leave, come back. Nothing's accomplished since the time they came back, and they don't even take responsibility that they missed the law of timing. It's unwise leadership.
Yeah, that's good.
Then there's other times that I see it and we're stuck in this mundane, we got to get this done, and we forget that we got to get this done so that we get to the next peak to see what else needs to be done. There. And so understanding that art of when my opportunistic vision casting excitement for the future is a distraction or a incredible lift to the organization is what we're talking about here in the art of leadership. And I'll tell you this, the only way I can help you to figure that out is to try it.
Yeah.
Because doing it with my current leadership team is different than the leadership team that I had 5 years ago. So I have to know, I have to watch them respond, and there have been times that I have determined that my current leadership can't handle all of the opportunity expressions as much as a previous leadership team could. So it's the dynamics of when someone can hear it, when someone can get excited about it, when somebody will get distracted about it, and what's on tap for the current leadership productivity you're on.
I love your suggestion of just try it. right?
Yeah.
And going back to saying we just got to live this out. Like you got to live it to gain the wisdom. As we wrap up, as you were talking, I want to give just another example. I want you to unpack this a little bit as you wrap up. I was thinking about something that as a change inside an organization is where really communication has, man, all eyes on it, right? Because, man, people are, when it comes to change, they're like, how's that going to affect me? And communication's got to be on point. As a organization, as a leader, we were going through a change, and we didn't do a very good job of communicating it very effectively several months ago. Mm-hmm. We then gained knowledge from that. You unpacked that knowledge for us and then challenged us as an organization to make sure that now that we're communicating a new change, a new leader, a new stand-up, a new solutions group, hey, we better gain wisdom and then live it out a little bit differently. And you led us through that, and it was a great example of, hey, we did it this way. We had a little wisdom, all of us in the room. But then, man, we learned a ton, going back to what we started off about, learning lessons from failures. And then you helped coach us through that. And then you said, hey, and here's what we're going to do. And now we've done it again, and now we got more wisdom. And so to your point, it's just like, man, you just got to try it. You got to keep moving. You're never going to be perfect, but you got to keep living that out and just be able to accept that.
I'll just thank you, and I'll wrap up here, Chris. But I do want to talk about that. I believe we hold ourselves as leaders to a standard of needing to have wisdom with leadership. I'm the leader, I should have wisdom. I've been leading for 20 years, I should have wisdom. And I'm not opposed to that. We should be pursuing wisdom. I love John started the whole lesson with the Hebrew word for wisdom means skilled at living. Now, I love that descriptor and how he started it, because oftentimes we are doing something for the first time and we get frustrated with ourselves because we don't have wisdom. And I don't think you can have wisdom the first time.
No.
And so we go through this, and the example that you're just giving, we didn't have wisdom then because we had never tried to implement a shared solution before. Yeah. The second time we had, and we were starting to make similar steps to what we took the first time without contemplating. I don't believe we are held to the same level of scrutiny the first time as we are the second time, because wisdom should be more apparent in the second time. Knowledge applied, right? I want to challenge us as leaders today. I continue to hear leaders spinning out of control emotionally, and we're in what's called the Great Resignation. And I think we're in the Great Resignation because we're holding ourselves to a standard of wisdom that is not available in the world today. Nobody, Chris, that you and I are mentored by led post-pandemic. Nobody. And yet we find ourselves now that there is a normal or a new normal, or we're not all cooped up in homes and wearing masks and waiting. We find ourselves now judging our leadership aptitude and ability with how we led pre-pandemic, and there is no more leading pre-pandemic. We've been through a pandemic.
That's right.
And I'm watching the emotions of leaders spin out of control because they no longer feel wise. But I've never led 2 years past a pandemic when a potential recession is on the horizon, when people want virtuality in their workplace more than they're not wanting it, they're demanding it now. And if I can just encourage us in the Maxwell Podcast Leadership family, quit judging yourself post-pandemic with wisdom that you think you and I should have that is only relevant to pre-pandemic conditions. We're leading differently now. There are no models to lead. And I know there's a sense of normalcy coming, but emotionally, there is no normalcy in leadership right now because things are different. And I just want to challenge you and I to let's support one another as we garner knowledge of leading in post-pandemic conditions, and let's hold ourselves to becoming knowledgeable and don't hold ourselves to being wise yet.
That's good.
And as we navigate through this, we will lead, because here's what I'm going to tell you. I hate to see the Great Resignation, because the world needs powerful, positive change. And all this challenge and negative and emotional negativity that we have is not bringing about a better world.
Which you do, by the way. You do an incredible job of being able to communicate that. But I think there are a lot of people that have a hard time with that. I mean, we had a beautiful moment in our lead team meeting Monday with one of our executives who actually expressed he doesn't have a problem loving people. He has a problem expressing that he loves people. And I think there's a lot of people that can relate to that. So what would you suggest as far as disciplines of being able to not give yourself an out in that category? I think a lot of people would say, well, it's not how I grew up seeing love or modeling love, or it's not in my nature to be expressive. But I think just like our friends, they have a desire to express it and they want to be able to because of the impact that it not only has on their own heart, but for everyone around them. So how do you grow a discipline to be able to express that value the way that John does so freely, the way that you can so freely?
The first part of my answer is going to resonate with the people just like me. You just forget how awkward it makes other people feel. You get over how silly it might sound, and you just look people deeply in the eye that you love and appreciate, and you go, I love you. I appreciate you. Now, for some of you, I just set you free because it's all in you, and you're just waiting for somebody to give you permission to communicate that you believe in people because you naturally do that. I'm a words of affirmation guy. So you're asking a words of affirmation guy how to give words of affirmation. Here's step number one. Open your mouth. Let something fly because it's natural for me, right? But that's not really helpful for many of you. That's just people like me.
It's true.
So I do believe that for some that are less expressive, because there are some, I think you've got to practice doing that in environments that feel safe. It's like training wheels. It's like riding a bicycle. Do it with your parents' hand on the back seat for a little while. When my daughter learned how to ride a bicycle. Do your words of affirmation, your expressions of belief in others in environments that are safe. Now, what is a safe environment? That can be family, that can be friends. But practice. I found too many people that feel awkward doing it, and they don't do it anywhere and expect that it gets better. Find a space, commit that you're going to do it, and then find a space that it feels safer. There's one other thing I want to say to this, Becky, and that is, too often people say, well, I didn't get it from my parents. Well, I didn't grow up like that.
Right.
Well, I did that once, and they took advantage of me. Well, it feels insincere. I mean, there's 100 reasons why people that don't naturally just throw words of affirmation out or words of belief out, why they don't do it. Number one, it's true in this space as it is in everything else. Excuses are no excuse. You can't. I don't care what you didn't get from your parents. I don't care what didn't happen to you. I don't care what your nature is. Should you be expressing belief in people? Yes or no?
And you develop what you practice.
The answer is yes. Then now you have to practice. And I kill the excuses. So you're not like that. So your parents never gave that to you. So you did that once and the person left you. I get it. But all of that is just excuses because everyone wants to be believed in. And leader, they want to be believed in you and they want to hear it from you.
I believe that too. I think you and I are obviously naturally expressive. We don't have a problem putting words in the universe. But I will find that there are moments that I may have missed. And you and I travel enough that I think we've both created habits of what we do when we're on airplanes. And for me, it has become a moment that I write love letters to the people I care most about. So on my phone, I have categorized notes to all of my children, to even my son-in-law, to my husband. And those are the moments where I can actually be very open and expressive, and I can reflect on what's going on in their lives and my life. And then I've decided at the end of every year, I'm just going to publish those and give them to them as a way to just remind them at moments when maybe they need to have, maybe I'm not there and present all the time. Maybe I am in a different country, as you can relate to. Maybe I am not right with them, but maybe that's a moment they can look back and remember those moments that I've always believed in them. And I think as a parent, especially, sometimes it's hard because we have this guilt of not being with them all the time, or what did we leave unsaid, or did we empower them? But I think, and I know this with you because I've seen Macy as well, I think the one thing that we've done right, that we can give ourselves a little credit, is those kids know their potential because hopefully at some point they've been able to see themselves through our eyes. And then you watch John on a different level from a stage with complete strangers sometimes be able to empower people. I know he did that for me. The first time I ever saw John was in an event center with 15,000 people. And it was almost like he spoke right to me and nobody else was there.
Yeah.
Like we were best friends. He didn't know it yet, but it was so impactful because it was all the words I needed to say to myself. And here was this man who'd had all the experience, didn't know me personally, but the words just resonated. And I think all of us have the power to do that. It's just finding those moments.
Today's topic, we're going to talk about, I think this is, I love where we're going. We're going to do a little mini series here. I think there's 3 books that for what we do in organizational development and culture and working with teams that really stand out when it comes to that. One, obviously being the 5 levels of leadership. That's our methodology. The second one is Leaders' Greatest Return. It's really talking about developing people and the power of that. And the third one is leaderships. These are shifts that leaders have to make often. And so today's topic is why leaders have to make the shift from goals to growth. So I love where we're going on this around leadership.
Yeah, the whole idea about shifts that a leader needs to make comes up quite a bit in coaching conversations. One that I think we've done a podcast on it before was on, and it's number 1, the first shift in when you read the book, about making the shift from being a soloist to being a conductor. And so that if you're used to, you're an individual contributor and you're really good at what you do, and one day they tap you and say, hey, we'd like you to lead the department or lead a team. Now you're the conductor of that orchestra. You're not just playing in that orchestra. It's a completely shift in how you think and how you act to get not just your own performance, but to get performance from others. So I thought leadership, as well as some of these shifts that we're going to cover in the next couple of episodes, will be things that I see quite a bit.
And as leaders, we have to be open to change, and we have to be changing. And that's why I love this. Like, we should always be thinking about the shifts that we're making. So today we're going to talk about where the shift from goals to growth that John's going to lead us through with this content pieces that we're just going to kind of take back and forth here. And when you start out as a leader, you know, we talk about this in the 5 levels of leadership, where we get a position and then what do? We immediately want to just start producing. We want to start hitting our KPIs, and we make a mistake to where we kind of maybe don't grow, but we also just kind of jump right over connecting with our people. And so we think that kind of hitting our numbers and the KPIs, whatever your KPIs might be, will make you a better leader. It'll increase your value. And while it does from an external standpoint, really from an internal standpoint, you got to be growing on the inside to be able to keep producing and growing outside and hitting those KPIs. And so we are big here at Maxwell Leadership about it being a growth focus versus a goal focus.
Yeah, I love that shift from growth outward to growth inward.
It's good.
I mean, to me, that's saying if you shoot for goals, that you'll achieve the goals, but you may not grow. And it's funny, that meeting I had this morning with the client, they're talking about we get so focused on the scoreboard, on the revenue or the expenses or whatever what your measurement is, we forget to look at the daily growth that we're making as individuals to work toward that. So how do you make this leadership? And so we're going to, I don't think it's 5, I think it's maybe 7.
Doggone it.
I know you're being disappointed in me. But number 1, embracing change, that growth means change. And if you want to become a better leader and a better person, then you have to shift from this fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And mindset really is important in this shift. I think that I've got to be, we talked a little bit on the previous podcast about fix versus growth. Carol Dweck and the research she does, but I can't say enough for having that mindset that I'm here to grow.
Yeah.
Everything I do.
Yeah. And I remember what I just said a minute ago. Having influence and being a leader, it doesn't require change. Change is going to happen, right? So get ready for it. And we have this phrase that we say where if you don't like change, you'll like irrelevance a whole lot less. And so you just need to be aware of that, know that that's going to happen. And so you got to embrace it, as Perry talked about, as we begin to think about this from a growth standpoint. And the fixed mindset leaders, they don't like it. They don't like necessarily the change. And so they think it leads to, well, it's about failure and I am failing and I need to change. All those things that kind of go with that when we hear the word change and how does it affect me? Versus if we have a growth mindset, back on this mindset thing about change, then we'll embrace the change. We'll embrace the learning and the growth that we will go through. I mean, you think about this, anything that we change or do a little bit differently, at the end of the day, we've learned something versus having that repetitive
it doesn't mean
mindset.
We like change any more than anybody else.
No, not at all. Yeah.
But I see it in a different light, is that I'm going to go, and you think about it, your whole life is about change. You wouldn't be where you are if you didn't change.
Yeah.
So, but we look at it with a different view. You say, I'm going to go through this because I'll be better on the other side.
I mean, the only reason that we now have over 3 million downloads is because you heard my very first one and you said, Chris, I think we need to embrace change.
I love you.
So I've grown through this process, and I give all that credit to you. And what we've created today, though, right? Like just continually changing. So
right. Well, and the word that you made me think of is the word teachable.
There we go. Yeah, there we go. And so our next point here, great segue.
You were so teachable.
Yeah.
But it's a fantastic characteristic for a leader. And so, the question I always ask people on a coaching call, how teachable are you? And so how do you become more teachable if you decide and I think it builds trust with people when you say, when they view you as a teachable leader, that you don't have all the answers. You're always seeking to learn more. You're asking them to help you grow. You're observing, you're curious, lots of things like that. But you're looking for growth opportunities in every situation. You ask questions. You are curious. You seek out information from others. You file. John's big about filing what you've learned so that you can recall it. And then my favorite is passing on what I'm learning to others. I notice that the more I teach people, the more sticks with me to do that. So,
real quick, before you go to the next point, one of the things I was thinking about under this and having a teachable spirit and being okay with the failure side of things, which that's a strong word, but just the whole teachable spirit. We talk about this success cycle to where John talks about, hey, listen, try something, right? You're going to fail, then you're going to learn, then you're going to improve, then re-enter again. And so whether it's this podcast, whether it's leading a meeting, whether it's a new process or a system, be teachable through understanding that that's going to be a success cycle and a process that you're going to go through. Try it. Know you're going to fail. What are you going to learn? Be teachable through that. Then improve it, and then re-enter and do it again.
I'm smiling because I was in a meeting yesterday, and one of our teammates asked me, didn't you write about this on a podcast or a blog? I went, yeah, let's pull that up. And I pulled it up, and as she was looking at it, I was looking at it, I go, did I write this? It was like episode 12 or something.
Yeah.
It was a long time ago. I go, oh my gosh.
At least it wasn't one when you said, hey, look, can we do this together?
All right.
Okay.
Hey, podcast listeners, do you have a clear plan for growth? Achieving big results most often does not require big life changes. Small improvements over time compound into big results. Download Clear by Maxwell Leadership. It's the new free app where our expert guides help you pace your leadership journey and set a clear plan for your growth. You can also find all sorts of resources on the Clear app, including this podcast, and information on upcoming events such as our International Maxwell Conference this August. This upcoming conference will be like no other, so be sure to download Clear by Maxwell Leadership in your app store and register today.
Okay, number 3, make your love for learning greater than your fear of failure. I thought that was an interesting teaching to say, how big is this fear that I may have that I might not get it right, that can I make that idea that I want to grow, I'm willing to grow greater than that. Don't count losses. He says John says, don't count losses, count lessons. I thought that was pretty good.
I love that. Don't count losses, count the lessons. Because what do we do? Naturally, as human beings in the flesh, we go, man, I don't have this anymore. I lost that, or I didn't do this right. Mm-hmm. Versus, man, I learned this and I learned that. So I absolutely love that, which goes into a book, that John wrote. Sometimes you win, sometimes you learn.
Yep.
And I just think it's a powerful lesson. Well, number 4 is develop relationships with other growing people. This may be one of the strongest points that we're going to talk about today, because a rising tide raises all boats. And I know I've had the privilege of working in and around this organization for a long time, over 23, 24 years. I started when I was 5. And just being around this environment, we're in a bubble is what we call it. It's a leadership bubble. We're challenging personal growth all the time. But I think when you're around these type of people, the easier it is for you to grow and to get, and because it becomes contagious. And so be the difference maker. Take that step and be that person for your team or your organization, and bring people around you. I was talking the other day with somebody, and we started talking about the fact that if you look at the people that you're hanging out with, what are the conversations about? Are they all about, man, you remember when we did that? Remember when it was this? Or, man, this is what I'm learning, and this is where I'm going, and this is what I'm trying. That right there, just the next conversation you're in when you go out, for a social event, you're hanging out with couples or people where, just be aware of that and listen to that and the tone of the conversation, because you want to be around those that are saying, man, this is what I'm learning, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm reading, you do that all the time to me, right? Like, this is what, I was reading this book the other day, I was listening to this, and I learned that, and I'm just like, holy cow. So it just encourages me to be growing.
But that's two-way. I was just thinking the same thing, is that you do that to me and our team. We're looking at what are you learning this week? What are you reading? And then a week doesn't go by, somebody asks me, what are you reading now? Even my coaching clients are now saying, hey, what should I be reading?
Yeah.
So that, because we're in these conversations that we all realize we've got some growth to do.
Yeah.
Number 5, develop greater humility. Remember, we're going from goals to growth. How do I develop more humility? And this humility is really about the essence of being unafraid to admit when we're wrong or what we don't know, and being able to, it's like self-awareness and humility kind of tied in together here, about recognizing the gap that I could be filling by spending some time each day investing in me.
Yeah.
And when I admit that I'm wrong, then I'm on a path to discover what's right, and it just opens me up to learning more.
Which this is about self-awareness, and being having that humility to be open to that, and that feedback from other people, maybe also some tools. We often will talk to leaders and say, hey, the longer that you have led, you've been with the team, maybe you're in that fixed mindset, right? You're in that goal mindset, probably the more unaware you are of really what's going on,
right.
The pace of your growth, the pace of your leadership, what does it look like to be on the other side of your leadership? And so I think that humility side and the self-awareness is something that you should really look at when it comes to moving from goals to growth. Number 6, believe in yourself. This is just really about, do you believe that you're worth it? You listen to a podcast, you maybe listen to an Audible book, maybe you attend a workshop, maybe you begin some coaching. Like, believe in yourself, to invest in yourself and what you're learning. And when you believe in yourself and you invest in yourself, you'll begin to move from goals to growth.
And the last one, I really would love your opinion on this before I let you wrap it up. But John used a phrase, and I thought it was interesting, about embrace layered learning.
Yeah.
And to me, you just gave a one part of that, which is, how do I do learning? Am I doing podcasts? Am I looking at books? But I'm also, for me, it's so much of what we do. I'm studying and I'm learning and I'm investing in me, and then I go out and apply it. I do experience and I try something, and I do it on a coaching call, or I do it in front of an audience. In my world, so much I do a lesson and I get feedback, and now I'm adding to that. So I feel like I'm layering. But I wonder, how do you see layered learning when John speaks of that?
Yeah, so this is just a continuous growth mindset. period. Piling on. This encompasses everything that we just talked about. Whereas if the previous 6, if you're doing them well and you're moving from goals to growth, what's going to end up happening is you're just going to continue to see growth principles and movement, right, on laying on top of each other. And so you're going to continue to see that layered learning, which hey, take a chance, take a risk, learn something, and then you're going to learn something more. And then you're going to, but if you never take that step and begin learning, you'll never have the opportunity to experience layered learning.
Yeah. I think, Coach Bill Walsh years ago, San Francisco 49ers, but he had a phrase that kind of upset people because he said, the score will take care of itself. And I thought, no, you're the head coach. That's all we're about is the score. And he said, no, if you do these, if you invest in yourself, if you do the right things, if you are brilliant on the basics, if you're learning and growing and improving and growing and improving and growing and improving, score will take care of itself. I thought, isn't that true? And we get so focused on the goal, the scoreboard, that we don't do the daily things we should be doing.
Yeah.
And that the goals will take care of themselves.
Yeah. I love that.
I won the parent lottery. I didn't choose my parents. I just lucked out. I just happened to get the right ones. And what he taught me lives in me today. In fact, after I taught one of the lessons, Andrew, who's in the studio with me, does such a great job helping me with all this technology. Andrew, as I was talking about tribute to my father, Andrew, remember you told me, you gave me another title that you said, I know what you ought to call this series. And what was it? What was it?
Lessons my father lived that live on through me.
Lessons my father lived that live on through me, right? Oh, I like that. Lessons? What is it? One more time.
Lessons my father lived.
Yeah. So he lived them. Lessons my father lived that live on through me. Well, that's why I teach those lessons. In fact, my dad, he died, but he'll never die. In fact, at his memorial service, his grandchildren stood up and taught lessons that he taught them. They've got many years to live. And then his great-grandchildren shared things that they had learned, principles, life-changing lessons like mine. And those grandchildren are just in their teenagers years. Think how long my dad will live because those principles just live on in others. As I finish my time together, I've shared with you a few of his principles and lessons that are about faith. In fact, this one is express gratitude to God and express gratitude to others. And perhaps as you've listened to these lessons, and some of them are faith lessons, you've had a desire maybe you'd like to know God. Well, if you would, I can help you. My name's John. I'm your friend. And if you just go to maxwellfaith.com, you'll see me teach the 4 pictures of God. Most people don't know God because they have a wrong picture of him. And in this teaching, it's just a 10-minute teaching. I share with you how you can have a good picture of God, because once you see him as he is, you'll want to be his friend. You'll want him to be your friend.
If you've been hurt through what's going on in the economy right now and in the world, and you're like, where the heck do I begin to turn my world around? John recommends you start with getting clear again on your values. So talk about that a little bit, John, because it's beautiful. And I not read that anywhere else.
Well, Ed, thanks for bringing that up. And I, if it's okay, I would like to give all of your people a behind the scenes. It's not in the book at all. Okay. But I'd like to give context. I'd like to pull back the curtain for a moment.
Yeah.
Because I got to go clear back to 2002. And if you go back there, I mean, if you picked up the Time magazine in 2002, they summarized that year as the year of distrust. Because all I got to do is say Enron, okay? Yeah. That was the year when corporate scandals were rampant, and what we said we were and what we were was not the same thing, and employees got hurt and clients got hurt and corporations just went belly up and all kind of bad things happened. I was writing at that time for Time Warner, and Larry Kirschbaum, who was the CEO of the book division of Time Warner, called me up to New York City. We had a long dinner, and he said, John, I want you to write a book on business ethics for us. We just really need this voice in America right now. And I told him, I said, I can't. And he said, why can't you? I said, because there's no such thing as business ethics. And he looks at me and he said, what do you mean? Look what's happening in the business world. I said, I know, I understand that. but there's still no such thing as business ethics.
Wow.
I said, there's just ethics. Just ethics. It's not business ethics. It's not home ethics. It's not community ethics. It's not relationship. It's ethics.
Mm.
And either you have them or you don't.
Mm.
And by the way, if you have them, they work in business. Oh, happy day. Okay,
Yeah.
we're cooking. You with me?
Yeah.
So he gets it real quick, and he said, "Oh, I got it." He said, "Well, can you write a book on ethics?" And I said, "I'm not sure." He said, "Okay, you're holding back on me again. What are you doing?" And I said, "How do you write a book? I mean, ethics is all about doing the right thing for the right reason, regardless of the situation." I said, "How can you write a book on ethics when there's no truth or absolutes?" I mean, in a world of relativism, how do you get anything substantial? And I said, "You're going to have to give me a little time to see if I can write the book on it." And so I went with my research writing team. We talked about it a lot, and we finally came up with an answer. So I wrote the book on ethics, and the answer was very simple. We wrote the book based on the golden rule. Treat other people as you'd like to be treated yourself.
Beautiful.
And our research team found out that every religion in the world and every culture in the world has the golden rule. So it's not like I'm telling them something they don't already know or probably haven't even embraced. So we wrote that book, and it was a game changer. I mean, I was interviewed by the Chicago Tribune, Wall Street Journal. I went to West Point. I mean, I went to places and they said, "Talk to us about," and all of a sudden the light turned on in my life. And I realized back in 2002 that the golden rule was just nothing more than a good value. This is a good value. Treat others as you want to be treated. It's a good value. All of a sudden I thought good values can make us become good people if we learn them and if we live them. And so I began to, although I trained leadership skills, and everybody knows that, I develop leaders. I got that part. I said, I want to do more than help people with leadership skills. I want to help people not only be trained leaders, I want to help them be transformational leaders.
Very good.
And transformation is an inside job. It's a values issue. And it's one thing. Okay, let me give you an example. I'm known for the statement, everything rises and falls on leadership.
Yep.
Well, that's the good and the ugly, the good and the bad of leadership. Rises or falls. You got a bad leader, it falls, good leader, falls. Now, what makes leadership rise, Ed? Two things. Competence. In other words, you have to be a good leader, and good values. And you can't divorce them. You're not going to rise if you have great skills, but you have terrible values.
Yeah.
And if you have great values, but you have terrible skills, you can't lead anybody. I mean, the good news is they're a friend, but they aren't going to take you anywhere. and so the falls on leadership is when you have bad values and you have bad leadership skills. And so all of a sudden I realized that here we've been training people to lead in leadership skills, and we train them on what to do, and they know how to do the right thing, but we haven't trained them to be right.
Wow.
We haven't trained them to be the right person.
I felt like, John, I didn't mean to jump in, but I felt like it's one of the revolutionary parts of the book is the part on transformation tables, is that you make change in groups. And it made me think a couple of things, guys, on values. As I read the book and I did the values assessment myself, I think one of the reasons for all of you that are trying to make change, I think if you want it to be long-term, start different this time. Start with your values. That's the foundation that'll be everlasting. I mean, your values will evolve, obviously, over time. But the other thing that happens when you take inventory of your values, I think, and it helped me, is I've been talking a lot lately about you've got to believe you're worthy of success. You got to give yourself more credit for your intentions. Not enough. I think everyone predicates, I could be successful, as you said, when I'm completely ready, or when I've got all the answers, or I've got this amazing ability to execute. Well, how about you deserve the win because you're a good human, because you intend to make a difference? There's a lot to be said in this world right now for just somebody with great intentions, and not enough good people give themselves credit for having good intentions, delivering on their self-confidence, because they don't take an inventory of it. And then when you set at these transformation tables he talks about, you'll discuss them, but I think it begins to grow within you. And so I just think there's so many granular things like that in the book. You also talk in the book, John, you don't have to list them all if you don't want to, but I just think his stuff is so real. There's like eight streams of influence that you talk about and why they're necessary for transformation. If you want to go through all 8, you're welcome to, but if you could at least make some reference to it, I just feel like it'd be so valuable for someone watching this right now or taking notes, or maybe they're about to pull over to the side of the road so they can write these down.
The reason I love to be on your show is you know how to bring the best out of the person you interview. You're a master at it. You really are, Ed. You're a pro. And I'll go to the 8 streams, but when you talked about people with good intentions, that all of a sudden we give them courage. You know what? We let people that have had good intentions and a good heart out of the closet.
Yeah.
We let them. We say, you can get out the closet. You don't have to stay there anymore. And we're going to give you a simple game plan and you don't have to start big. Do you have 5 friends? Do you have 4 friends? Do you have 3 friends that you'd be willing to get together with and just work through these values? And I just love what you said, because I thought to myself, wow, I wish I would have written it as good as you said it, as far as we just really help people who really would like to make a difference, but have never had the courage or the confidence.
Yeah.
The thing, it's always kind of been somebody else is going to have to make a difference. I'm just going to hope and pray for it.
Right.
And all of a sudden, no, you can walk out of the closet now and you can start doing it. And so that transformation, that magic happens there. We may come back to the table a little bit, because interaction, hearing other people discuss their difficulties and issues just really helps bring everybody out.
Let's stay there for a second, John. I think it's too valuable. So it reminded me almost like if you go to church, there's, you go to church every Sunday, but then sometimes there's like a small group where you sit around in fellowship and you'll share a scripture and discuss it, and then it grows and you come back. I think it's you're right.
I went back, and Jake, thanks for providing this. Albert Einstein's quote, "Try not to become a person of success, rather become a person of value." And I love that, Tracy, because, and I'm going to take a couple of minutes here, because I really resonate with John's lesson today, and I love how he shared it's a risky statement. When I first heard it, I was like, success is for everyone. And I made a joke here. Success all around. I'm buying success today. Let me spread it around. And we kind of laughed about that. Yep. But then as I heard John teach, I went back to my story. And I went back to a story that perhaps those of you that listen to the podcast, you're very familiar with. I truly joined John Maxwell's team on May 1st of the year 2000. Bankrupt relationally, bankrupt financially. I wasn't giving any money. I wasn't making any money. I had no generosity in me. I think I still had a spirit, an attitude of generosity, but I had very little. I didn't bring any relational equity to the table. Nobody gave me a great reference that got me in the door. I had to introduce myself to every soul on the team because nobody knew me. In other words, I walked into an environment and I didn't bring very much. And now look what this environment has given me. I've went from the stock room to now getting to co-own things with John, be the CEO for the last 12 years. And I did a lesson recently that just underscores that I do believe this lesson, success is for everyone. I did a lesson with several thousand of our coaches, our Maxwell Leadership Certified coaches. And this was the lesson title, "If it can happen to me, it can happen to you." If I can do what I am doing today with as little as I brought to the table, then success can happen for you too. And I believe it's wrapped in these components of knowing your purpose in life, growing to your maximum potential, sowing seeds that benefit others. And Tracy, I know you have a story of extreme success. What I want to do here in this podcast is, one, make it believable. Success is for you. Success is for you. The second thing I want to make sure that we don't do is create a success gap. Tracy and I are at a perceived successful place in our life, and I don't want that to make success feel out of reach for you. Go back to the core definitions that John's given us. Apply that to you and begin, as Albert Einstein said, begin that journey of adding value, and success will follow. And so I sounded like I just closed the podcast right there, Tracy, and I really didn't. But that was so on my heart. I was like, I really want to get this out, because if it can happen to me, Mark Cole, I promise you it can happen for you too.
And I totally agree. And I love this lesson because it is both of our stories. And I feel like we can sometimes become numb to people who are in a perceived position of success and think something magical happened for them or whatever. And really, it's just consistent, unseen steps that have been taken in a certain direction in the areas that John talks about here. Because I'm the same way. When I first found John, I was 21 years old. I had not been to college. I was seeking out John because I wanted to grow, and I heard he was the guy to learn from. And so in these same 3 areas, and I even broke them down into even 4, because he says success is knowing my purpose in life, growing to my maximum potential, and sowing seeds that benefit others. But here's how I hear it. When I first came to John, I thought he was going to teach me, Mark, I don't know what I thought he was going to teach me. Things I didn't know, things I couldn't even title, And what I heard was, number 1, I need to discover my purpose. Number 2, intentionally grow every day. Number 3, practice generosity. And number 4, add value to people. Guess what? I could do all 4 of those at 21 years old without $1 to my name. And probably that day I did not have $1 to my name. And so I love that, because every single person, no matter what level of success you have today, as you're listening to this podcast, that you can do those 4 things today, no matter what age or stage you're in life today. And I love that so much.
Well, and going to that, I'm going to give a shout out to our intern, Kyle Reisig, that's in studio with us today. He's just come and helping us for a period of time in between classes at college. And Kyle was asking, I love this, an intern that is asking questions his very first week. He's not soaking it all in. He's engaging. He was asking me a demographic question of our podcast listeners. And then I gave him kind of what age demographic information that we have in our world. And he said, let me tell you this. More of the students that I participate with, that I go to school with, needs to hear what I'm hearing in studio today. He said, we've got to figure out a way to get this podcast into the next generation, into the college age kids, into the high school kids. And his point is because this will help us. He's in that age group. This will help us set the courses in life that will make decisions that will lead us to a greater life of success and definitely a greater life of significance. And then, Tracy, you come out of this talk and say, hey, for me, it was 21 years old. I was at this shaping age, this age to where I wanted to figure out what I was going to do when I grow up. And that's where you begin to set your course on these 4 attributes that you just shared. Love that.
Yeah, and you know what? Let me just say something before we aren't even to our first point yet, but let me just say, yesterday I was in the kitchen with my 16-year-old son. And I was making pasta, and he, you know how it goes with teenagers. The conversations just pop up when you're just doing regular life things. And it turned into a conversation very similar to this one, where he was trying to figure out something in his life, and he was processing it all in his own head. And he had said he had talked to some of his friends about it. And I had just said, buddy, you know what? This is the value of parents. It's not just to process it through your head, or other kids who are at your stage of life who can only see from 16 years old and less. Go higher. That's what the value of parents is. Talk to us and help us see, processing through maybe, how you can add value in a different way and get your eyes off of yourself. I love this statement. That it's not that you should be thinking of less of yourself, but think of yourself less. That's generosity. And so don't think less of yourself. I don't want you to think less of yourself, but sometimes we need to think of ourselves less and look at other people. And that's when we really start to get in this first point is, how do I know my purpose in life? And I feel like there are podcast listeners, because I know this was me too. And so I know you can relate to this. I don't know if this was you, Mark, but I just didn't know my purpose in life for a while. I felt like it was this big, huge, abstract thing. And so I just started growing and trying to be generous in spirit. I didn't have a lot of money to be generous with, but I tried to be generous in spirit with my time. I started to be generous with the way that I spent my time with people. And the more I did that, the more I discovered my purpose. And so do you have any advice for people who are at that place where they want to dive into growth, but they don't really know their purpose yet? That age group, kind of what you were talking about, might not know their purpose yet.
Well, it's so funny as you were saying that. I number one, I'm going to question 1 and question 2 right here about how do I maximize my potential, which is where you talked about growth, Tracy. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here and you're going, yeah, for a while I didn't know my purpose. I'll be honest with you. It wasn't until 31 that I even knew I was supposed to know my purpose.
Have one.
It wasn't until about 32 or 33 before I realized, hey, I've got a purpose too. And then it was a little bit later than that when I could state my purpose. So let's be really clear. People like Kyle in the studio today, Javon, all these young men and women that I get to interact with that's seeking purposeful things, I'm going, you guys have no idea. You're a decade, if not more, ahead of me.
Yeah,
because I'm 30 years old, bebopping along, joining John Maxwell's team as an entry level. And somebody said, what's your growth plan? And I went, I don't know. And then they said, well, what's your purpose? And I went, purpose? To wake up, to eat, to find somebody that likes me? I mean, this purpose question was so much bigger than me. Right. And so now let me tell you why I've got to link question, how do I know my purpose? And then 2, how do I grow to my maximum potential together? Mm-hmm. I have to do that. Because it was as I began to chart my course for growth that I began to realize my potential in life. Mm-hmm. I don't believe based on my life. I spent 30 years living out a purpose, but guess what? It was everybody else's purpose for me. Yes. It wasn't my purpose. Yeah. And when you, young person, live a life, choose a career, and choose a relationship because everybody else in your life is pleased with that but you're on a train wreck. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of time. That's right. Because the purpose has got to resonate within you deeper that when all odds are stacked against you, you still chase your purpose. When everybody says, no, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard, you still go after it. That's what a real purpose is. It is defiable against all odds and against all affirmation and confirmation of those around you. Mm-hmm. So for 30 years, Tracy, I lived on purpose. It was just somebody else's purpose. It wasn't mine.
Right.
Well, my life train wrecked. Mm-hmm. And then I began to realize that I didn't need to just have a purpose. I needed to have my purpose. Mm-hmm. And when I began an intentional path of growth each and every year, for 3 years, I just grew myself. I intentionally pursued growth. And in that intentional pursuit, I'll never forget it, the end of 2002, in a cabin in Blue Ridge, Georgia, I'm reviewing how I've grown the last 2 years. I'm setting the course of how I want to grow the next year. And boom, it clarified for me what my purpose was. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you what that is because we're talking about it. And perhaps some of you are new podcast listeners and haven't heard it. It's not going to sound that profound to you. But to me, it's everything. My life exists to inspire and motivate people to help them reach their full potential. You know why I woke up this morning and didn't stay in bed? Because my life exists to inspire other people. I saw the podcast on my schedule this morning and I went, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that today. Yeah. I know some things I've got to do this afternoon that are a little difficult. They're not in my strength zone. They're not in my skill set. To be honest with you, they're not in my appetite for my agenda. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do them. You know why? Because I exist to multiply, inspire, motivate, and inspire people to reach their full potential. Mm-hmm. I'm not doing it because my parents, my relationships, others around me want to do it. I'm doing it because it is what wakes me up in the morning. It's what keeps me up at night. And that was found by answering these questions. What is my desire? What are my talents? What are my opportunities? And I found answers to those questions by growing myself, surrounding myself in a growth environment, and writing out a plan for personal growth. For me, Tracy, the answer for those 2 questions were so symbiotic that I can't separate them in the answering.
And you know how, let me just tell those of you who are listening and you're aligning what Mark's saying up to your own life and you're trying to think, does that fit for me? Does that fit with what my personal life purpose is? And I would just say to you, when you are in that zone and you are growing in that zone, it is going to be, you will have hard times. It's not like it's just all smooth sailing when you're growing in your sweet spot and in your purpose. But there will be times when you'll feel like your hair's on fire. You're so outside of your comfort zone. But you will also at the same time feel so deeply fulfilled. So like Mark said, called out of bed in the morning. Sometimes I wake up at 3:30 in the morning and I check my phone on my night table. I'll turn it over and I'll see like what time it is. And I think, is it too early to get up yet? Yeah, my body probably, I know what I need to do today, and I probably need a little bit more sleep, but sometimes I'm so excited to get into my day. I remember my mom saying that. Like, I look forward to waking up in the morning because I can't wait to get into my day and what I do. That is somebody who is driven by purpose and every day getting up to do your purpose, so that while you might have days where you feel stressed or you might feel out of your zone or like your hair's on fire because you're so uncomfortable because you're out of your comfort zone, you're still your heart's on fire. You're excited to get up and get into it. And when you are in a growth environment where other people are in that same space, it even pulls you deeper. What's that quote? I'm going to misquote it, but John always says, like, when you're in the deep waters, it doesn't matter how deep you are. It's like once you go out of the shallow zone, it doesn't matter how deep the water is. Just keep going.
He also says, Tracy, he says that he doesn't wake up out of discipline. He wakes up out of anticipation.
Yes.
And I'm telling you, for me, that happened as I began to discover the return on personal growth and the clarity of a personal vision and purpose statement. And that anticipation, and that's what I really want you to have at the end of this, is this pursuit for growth, this pursuit for clarity in your purpose. Success will come with those things.
That's exactly right. And another thing I'd like to touch on, and I know this is something that's important to you, is practicing generosity. Yeah. And this is something that John does, I think, perhaps better than anyone. I mean, that's why he's a mentor to both of us. I am drawn in by John's generosity. He is just such a generous human being. And I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about his spirit of generosity. When you are around John, you just feel his care, his concern for you. You can tell he's prepared. He's looked forward. He's anticipated spending time with you. And that is something that, to me, draws me in. And I want to be like that. I want to make other people feel the way I feel when I'm with John, because he is so generous in his spirit. Can you talk a little bit about generosity and what that looks like for you in your leadership and in your personal life?
Yeah, and I can give you a funny story that just happened this past weekend. We're recording this now, and John and I were just traveling together. And and so this all backs up John's statement that I want us all to get, and I will tell you the story. But he said generosity is not a bank account. It is an attitude. And so many people think that when they reach a certain earning threshold, or when they pay off their car, their house, or when I start making real money, for all you college students out there listening, I'll start being generous then. Yeah, maybe. But it won't be because you got money. It'll be because you got an attitude of generosity. There's a big difference in a big bank account and people that have no generosity, and a small bank account with people that are abundant at everything that they do. John this week, and John's really taught me to, by standards, over-tip, over-express appreciation to those that are in the service industry. And so we were at a really nice hotel this past weekend, and the guy helped us with our luggage. He helped us with this. He did a lot of great things. And so I gave him a very generous, like, John Maxwell inspired tip. I mean, I gave him like a really nice tip for what he had helped me with that day. And the guy was just blown away. He said, Mr. Cole, thank you. We came down one day later. Mr. Cole, thank you. We came down the next day, and he said, Mr. Cole, you've just been so good, so nice. Thank you very much. Well, then I watched John slip over behind the car and slip him what I knew was a $100 bill. And he got back in the car, and I said, he remembered your name too. Why are you trying to get him to quit being so appreciative to me? He said, Mark, it just struck me. This is him. This is him. And I cut up with him, and we had this crazy sense of humor. But I was acting like he was trying to trump me and being more generous, out-tip me and get more affirmation from the guy that was serving us with our luggage and all that. And I said, John, why'd you just out-tip me? And he said, anybody that appreciates something so much as he did the first day we got here probably has a need, Mark, bigger than you and I could imagine. And I just felt compelled that I needed to go double and triple what you had done for a guy that was showing that much generosity. And I went, golly, what a brilliant, I mean, I'm not making this just happened. What a brilliant attitude of generosity. John goes, man, this guy is so grateful. I bet you a little bit more generosity would go a long way in this young man's life. Because we're in a city that has truly been shut down until recently. If he's dependent on tips, he's probably accumulated a lot of bills. And my relatively generous tip to him inspired John to a greater letter of generosity, not because he wanted to outgive, not because he has a big bank account, but because he has a heart, a spirit of generosity. And Tracy, you said it at the beginning, and we're speaking in John's absence here, but I've never experienced the level of generosity that I see on a daily basis with John Maxwell, and I want to experience that.
I do too. And we can all start practicing that now. Even if you don't have money, the resources financially, you can start with your time. You can start with being generous with love and kindness toward people. That, not everybody's kind to people, especially, gosh, you just go out. There's a lot of angst with people right now because of those bills, because people haven't been able to work. There's a lot of angst in private lives. And so when you're generous with kindness to people, you can just see how they're taken aback and they're grateful for it. And so imagine if we're giving 2 and 3 times more generosity and kindness towards people, right. How that's going to be. I'll toss it back to you, but the last thing that I really want to share with people is the other day when I had a phone call with John, I would just want to share with our audience what he shared with me because it was greatly impactful for me and I wrote it down. And he said to me, Tracy, I have found that most people do better when they're believed in. He said, wow. I do better when people believe in me. And I've just found that most people do better when people believe in them. And he said, so I want to believe in people so that they can do better. And I thought that's a generosity again, but it's also valuing people. And what a lesson. And so I share it with you because it's impacted me. And that private conversation, I'm sure he said it to many people too, but I share it with all of our listeners because what a beautiful lesson.
Yeah, it's how successful people think. I mean, you're sitting here and we're truly, rightly so, taking a lot of time talking about success, but showing you how success is really all about others. It's really about significance. And we're taking a lot of time here at the end of this to show you how successful people think. And you don't gain success and then all of a sudden start thinking. You think your way along until you see that level of success. And so John wrote a book, How Successful People Think. In fact, Jake, I'd like to make that available to everybody. Let's put it in our show notes. We'll put a link. You go to that link, put in a promo code podcast, and we'll give you 15% off of this book, How Successful People Think. I want to give you that next step because listening to this podcast is one thing, but getting into your awareness, how you should be thinking is truly one of the first and major steps on your way to a successful life, on a way to successful decisions and processing life from a successful perspective. So I want you to take that book and get it because again, we're talking about generosity. We're talking about John. You quoted John, gave us an experience of John, Tracy. There is this unbelievable sense of fulfillment that will come to you as you realize that your life has substance, that your life has significance, that your life is successful. And we want you to have that here. That's our passion. I love to share a podcast comment from a listener that said, this is actually from Lena. Lena also, a few weeks ago, I referenced somebody from episode 200. It was a good lesson. We want you to listen to that. We'll put it in the show notes. But Lena was listening to episode 200. She said, hey, thank you so much for the link to the 21 Laws. I've been listening to this podcast while posting payroll every Wednesday. And I've been doing this every morning for the last 3 years. I can't begin to count how many changes, small and big, I have made in the last 3 years that has been directly influenced by the podcast. Thank you and good work. Enough about me. My role today is to get out of the way because, Don, first to you, how cool, how incredible was it to work on a project with the Scott Drew, making his story come to life about the road to joy. Tell us a little bit about that and launch us with the first question.
I have to tell you, Mark, John, we've all worked around books and book projects. They're every once in a while you get that opportunity where you just know that not only are you going to get honored to work on someone's book, you're going to grow in the process. And I knew from day one that Scott Drew was going to help me as a man, as a father, as a leader, as a Christian. He was going to help me grow just by the way he conducted himself. And so, Scott, I want to jump in because I want to value every second we have on this podcast. You came to Baylor, as we detail in the book, when basically no one in the world had any interest in the job, right? You had 1 year of head coaching experience. The program was in trouble. Everyone in the sport knew that NCAA investigations were going to lead to hefty penalties. Why did you believe it was the place for you? And how did you have vision that you could be successful there?
Well, first and foremost, this is an honor and privilege being with you and John and Mark today. And I had no idea John actually had helped my dad when he was at Bethel College, gave him some great coaching advice, talked to the team back in the day, and helped my dad become the coach that he's become. Obviously, your relationship with Dale Brown had an impact on my dad. My dad gets in the Hall of Fame. I actually learned a couple things from him, and we're able to be successful. So I owe you guys a lot. Thank you very much. With that, whenever you have major life decisions, when you have any decisions, hopefully you're prayerful. And one thing I've always God put on my heart was to coach at the highest level, to have a chance to win national championships, and to do it honoring him and giving him the honor and glory. And Baylor University, largest Baptist school in the nation, the last time they had a tournament win was 1950. Valparaiso University was the largest Lutheran school at the nation, and their tournament success was about the same. My dad went to Valpo when I remember Digger Phelps was like, Homer, you can't go there because it's a dead-end job. You'll never win there. 5 years later, they start to turn it around, have the first winning season, and Valpo becomes a household name during the 90s. And that blueprint, I thought we could do just that at Baylor. The big reason why you go, God says go. I prayed about it. I felt led to go there. And where people thought we weren't going to be successful at Valpo, we had done that with God's blessing. And I thought we could do the same at Baylor.
Wow. Now, I kind of jump on this for a moment because you had several probation things on your back. You hadn't had a successful winning program for many, many years. And yet you turned it around. And one of the things I've always said about leadership is if you really want to know a great leader, they need to be what I call a U-turn leader. And a U-turn leader is somebody that gets an organization when it's going down. It's going down. It's not going up at all. And then they turn it, they kind of flatten it out and stabilize it, and then they bring it back up. That's a U-turn. You caught it here and you brought it back over to here. To me, that describes you, Scott. You really caught it at the bottom, and you turned around. Help all of our listeners. Give me one thought. When you think of taking something that's not doing well and turning it around, what's the one thing when you look at Baylor that you could just say to me, this is what we did that began to give us hope, began to give us a glimpse of what we could become?
Great question. First, there's no shortcuts. I mean, you can't put a piece of duct tape over a leak and expect it to last. And what we did at Baylor is just what we did at Valpo, and that is we recruited to our niche, people that we thought would represent our university in the way that would make our alumni proud, our school proud, and people that would fit in with our school. So you're taking character over talent. And at that point, you bring in enough high character people, and then they start to get more and more talent. And now you have an organization that's successful. So with that, so often people take over a job, take over a business, take over a sports team, and they just try to accumulate talent, but it doesn't fit their culture. And it's not about what's going to make their program successful over the long haul. We knew early on when you have 5 to 7 scholarship players and half the team are walk-ons, You're probably not going to win a lot of games, but you know what? We had great quality walk-ons, and the scholarship players we tried to bring in and recruit were ones that we could build on and lay that foundation, because a house has to be built on a solid foundation. And then from there, the talent level increases, and then the success starts to come.
Scott, I gotta, one of the best videos your wonderful wife found in the run up to the 2021 championship. She found the video, the old time of VHS, right? That's how old this was, of your press conference when they were introducing you as the head coach at Baylor, right? We already explained it was a horrible job. Nobody wanted it, but you walk in, there's a handful of players who all the good ones had already left. And I interviewed the ones who were there. So I'm not insulting anybody, but you're there and you walk in and you declare, I came here to win a national championship. And I've talked to several of those players who said the eye roll in the room was like you could hear the eye roll. That's how dramatic it was. Now they're all thinking you're nuts. Where does the positivity come from? First, I'd love to know that. But secondly, how important is it to declare something big when you're stepping into a new environment?
Well, we know without a vision, the people perish. And as far as the vision, I'm blessed. My dad is one of the most positive people that I've come across. And the other most positive is Dale Brown. And then you two jump in the mix. So, I mean, I got a bunch of positive people around me, and the glass is half full with me. So I definitely knew that this is why I was interested in being at Baylor, and hopefully God was calling me for that purpose. And at the same time, I knew that, we went to the Sweet 16 at Valpo. And literally, we're 2 wins away from a Final Four, and now you're going to a better conference in a bigger school. Why can't you win a championship here? And we all know who God calls. I mean, he calls the Davids, he calls the Gideons, he calls Moses that's a stutterer. I mean, I know I'm not Goliath. So anyway, I know it's God, and to him be the glory. And I'm here for the ride.
So, Scott, when you talk, when Don's talking about you went there and you said we want to win a national championship, leaders always go first. They always go first. And when you made that statement, a couple of things happened. One is you declared yourself. You set your standards of expectation higher than the people. But when you did that, you began to raise the expectation of the people. Somebody's got to raise that level. And when you made that statement, you allowed people to begin to believe again. The second thing you did when you did that is you validated the importance of leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. Always has been, always will be. And to me, that day, what the people found is they probably got a great coach, but what they also got was a great leader. And I've known people that can coach that really are great leaders. I've known people that are leaders that really are some good coaches. And I would say that you are a leader coach, and that kind of set the bar for who you were, what you expected of yourself. Nobody else set that bar for you. And that's another thing. I think great leaders, they always set their own bar. I never expect anybody to set my bar higher than I set it for myself. My expectations of who I am and what I need to be, I set for myself. In fact, I think you're in trouble when somebody else is setting the bar for you and they're raised and you're trying to get there. And obviously you did that when you arrived at Baylor.
See, that's why I wanted to be on this podcast. You got me motivated. See, you got to have someone motivate the motivator.
When I was 27, I did this. So I developed a strategy I'm going to give you right now called Plan Ahead. And this is how to navigate successful change. And can I tell you something? I wrote this down at 27. I followed it. I followed today. It really works. The letter P, predetermine the change that's needed. The first thing you want to do is you want to sit down and you want to predetermine what is the change that's needed in my life. Because if you're going to turn something around, change has to happen. Now, You don't want action without understanding what you're wanting. So your whole goal isn't to go in and change something. Your goal is to change something that matters, that works. So only you as a leader can predetermine what that change needs to look like. And the way you do it is basically say, this is what is. I mean, hey, Lou Holtz said, I have a losing team. I want to have a winning team. What's it mean to take a losing team and make them a winning team? I asked him that process. And Lou told me, he said, John, I asked the players that were on the team that were coming back, why do you think you lost so many games last year? He said, what I did is I did two things. I listened to everybody that was in that losing environment. I asked a lot of questions until I figured out what the issues were. And then he said that great statement, how does a leader that doesn't ask questions ever figure out what to do? I love that. If you're not asking questions of your people, you don't have a clue where they are. You don't have a clue what they think. And he said, I just asked questions. Arthur Blank, when he bought the Atlanta Falcons, told me the very same thing. He said, John, I just went out on the street and I just asked the fans, tell me, why don't you go to the Falcons games? This is because they stink. They're not any good. Prices are too high. Food costs too much. He said, I just got all those lists. And he said, here's what these leaders know. The answers to the questions you ask will be the strategy that you implement to make the change. The strategy is within the people, but nobody's extracted it out of them. So you got to predetermine the change that is needed. And I think you do that by finding out where the people are, asking the question. After a while, you got it. The picture begins to be clear. The letter A, lay out your steps. Now, I've got to lay out my steps to bring people through successful change. If I walk close to the people through this change, I'll be their leader. If I walk far ahead of the people in this change, I'll become a martyr. You don't want to be a martyr. The good news is if you die a martyr's death, you're always special in the hearts of people. Bad news is you're dead. That's just not a good thing. You with me? So you got to do what I call the leadership dance. This is the leadership dance. You can call me the Arthur Murray of leadership. Okay? Here's the leadership dance. This is the way this works. You got to walk ahead of them so they can see where they got to go. But you got to be close to them. Don't be walking far ahead of them. You with me? Yes. Close enough so they can see. You got to walk beside them so they can participate with you in the journey, so that you can listen and you can interact and you can take this journey together. They're in the seat beside you. And you got to walk behind them so that you watch the people that you empower. And the leadership dance is doing all three of those things at the same time. You walk ahead as an example. You walk beside as a friend. You walk behind as a leader that empowers. And once you can do those three things and mix it up with the people, you're laying out your steps very well. The letter A is adjust your priorities. Very simple. Whenever you're going through change, there's no such thing as a pre-game plan that you actualize out completely. Let me tell you the difference between a manager and a leader. A manager is a person who took plan A and won't get off of it because he doesn't want it to change on him. He's got the plan out. He's got the strategy out. Don't mess with it. This is the strategy. Here, stay right here. Let me tell you, a leader starts plan A because he knows you have to have a plan. But he, at any moment, is ready to change to plan B because he's found out a better way. If you think you get the answers on the front end, you've not led very much. Your answers come in the leadership itself, not in the front end. That's why plan A never ends up plan A. It's plan B or plan C. Why? Because you adjust and you hear and you listen and hey, by the way, you seize that opportunity. Remember, the great coaches are great because they make halftime adjustments. That pre-game plan at halftime has to be revisited. And you have to say, okay, what works? What doesn't work? And the changes you make have to be critical changes, not cosmetic changes. Remember this, cosmetic changes are easy to accept and implement. So people like cosmetic changes. They change the color, they change the number a little bit, and they just love that kind of stuff. It always kind of bugs me a little bit because I sit there and say, and, where are you going with it? Where are you going? Outside they like gray better than black, okay. What else are we going to do, okay? And so you want to make critical changes. You don't want to make cosmetic changes. And understand this. As you make these changes, there's always an answer. Don't ever get into that scarcity mindset as a leader that if I go this path, there's no answer down to this path. There's always an answer. And there's usually more than one answer. That's why leadership is such a great art. Leadership is such a great art because you begin to understand that as you lead them, as you journey, you give them the best leadership. And that's why trust is essential in the people with you. That's why trust is essential, so that you can make these changes as you go to get them there. Okay. And the next one is notify your key personnel. Sit down when you're going through changes, and there are two kinds of key people you need to notify. You need to notify your influencers. These are the people that they better say yes because you're not going to get it done without their yes. Their approval is essential. Are you with me? So you got to notify up front the influencers, and you got to notify up front the implementers. They're the ones that are going to make the dream come true. So you got to get the permission of the influencers for the plan to fly, but then you got to get your implementers because they're going to work the plan. So you notify key personnel. Then you allow time for acceptance. Now you sit down with your key people and you allow them to have time to accept where you're going. Now this is where leadership art is at its highest form. Because your only intuition and timing are a result of a leadership gift, or they're a result of giftedness. Whatever you're gifted in, you understand timing and intuition. If you're not gifted in it, you don't have timing or intuition going for you at all. So you're intuitive in your giftedness. Your ability to do timing is in your giftedness. So this allowing time for acceptance, this is where you begin to allow people to have the time that they need to move forward with you. And to do that, you have to, first of all, slow down. And when I say slow down, this is something I've always had a problem with. I'm dealing with one of my weaknesses now. I don't slow down well. When I see it, I'm gone. And then I realize, I got to take people with me. So I come back to get you. But when I come back to get you, it's like, are you ready? And if I come back to get you and you're not ready, I got you. And I'll sometimes go again. And I have to really work hard on this slowing down process, okay? Because naturally I want to speed up. I don't like anything slow. There's not. I like to drive fast. Yeah, it's just. I have a need for speed. Okay. I have a need for speed. Okay. And as a leader, what happens is you get too far out in front of your people. Right. Does that mean? And so you got to slow down. Second thing to do in this allowing time is you got to make sure you're clear in your communication. Because when they don't understand, people cannot follow what they do not understand. And so all communicators understand the value of clarity on the front end. So I travel a lot, and I brought this with me because I just love it. When you travel, you just find some funny things that are written. And these are signs in English from various parts of the world. For example, a dry cleaners in Bangkok. I love this. Drop your trousers here for the very best results. So a bunch of people in front of that dry cleaners mooning the rest of the people. Hotel brochure in Italy. This hotel is renowned for its peace and solitude. In fact, crowds from all over the world flock here to enjoy its solitude. This is from a Tokyo hotel. It is forbidden to steal hotel towels. Please, if you're not a person to do such a thing, then please do not read this. In Bucharest hotel lobby, the lift is being fixed for the next day. During that time, we regret that you will be unbearable. Hotel in Athens. Visitors are expected to complain at the office between the hours of 9 and 11 o'clock daily. Is it complaining time yet? Is it? In a Rome laundry, ladies, leave your clothes here and spend the afternoon having a good time. Outside a Hong Kong tailor shop, ladies may have a fit upstairs. In a Rhodes tailor shop, order your summer suits. Because it's a big rush, we will execute customers in strict rotation. Bang! Next. In Copenhagen, an airline ticket office, we take your bags and send them in all directions. You know, it's our gift. We'll just send them anywhere they are possibly. Make your communication clear. Head into action. The H is head into action. Get going. Just start going. You never know the level of commitment from your people until you ask for action. You just never know how committed they are. The letter E, expect problems. Expect them. Why? Because motion causes friction. You start moving. And it's a tremendous leadership mistake to think that you have such a plan that is problem-free. Okay? And that everybody will buy in. So what leaders need to do, this is so beautiful. It's so negative, but it's so good. When I say expect problems, this whole process, here's what you got to do as a leader. You got to think the worst first. You got to think the worst before anyone else. You got to speak the worst first. And you got to answer the worst first. You got to do all three of those things. In other words, you got to think what problems are going to be there. And then when you figure out what problems are going to be there, you say, now as we do this, there are a whole bunch of problems we're going to encounter. When you speak it up to the people, they'll say, oh my gosh, he's already figured out that we got, and let me tell you, when those problems occur, let me tell you what we're going to do. When you can do that well, understand you're really helping them with positive change. And the next one is always point to your successes. Somebody said, why? I said, because you always have people point to your failures. I mean, some people, that's their spiritual gift. You understand. If they can't find criticism, they're just not very comfortable. And then daily review your progress. Daily review your progress. Why? Because things get off on a daily basis. Things get off course on a daily basis. Problems occur on a daily basis. And I close this section of creating positive change, which is the acid test of leader. I close this because in the 21 irrefutable laws of leadership, I have what I call the law of buy-in. And the law of buy-in, I think, answers this whole process of creating positive change within an organization. The law of buy-in just simply says people buy into the leader before they buy into the vision. And so what I want you to understand is when people say, can I create positive change within the organization? Can I do a U-turn? Can I turn this around? The question is very simple. How much of the people bought into you? If they bought into you, you can turn it around. Just think as I close of the story I gave you of Lou Holtz that turned 6 university programs around. Losing programs within 2 years had him in college bowls. Think of what happened about the 5th college he went to with a reputation of a turnaround U-turn leader. Can you imagine just the excitement and the momentum of Lou Holtz coming to our college? You know, we just stink. And he's going to come here and he's going to turn us into winners. Okay. Now let me tell you something. It's a phenomenal thing when you have your reputation that you're a problem solver, and it's a phenomenal thing when you have a reputation, that you turn things going the wrong way around and you make them positive. Once you get that, this is a leadership edge that you have. It's a leadership edge. It gives you a sense of momentum. It gives you a sense of moral authority that allows you to come back into a situation. And now, here's what I learned a long time ago. When people believe the best in you as a leader, they give their best to you as a leader. So you want to become good at this session, because this is the area that once you can do it and you can do it well, you kind of get a reputation as a turnaround artist, a U-turn leader that creates positive change, and then all kind of very good and exciting things happen. So I wish that for you. I wish that for me. I wish that for all of us.
Welcome to the Maxwell Leadership Executive Podcast, where our goal is to help you increase your reputation as a leader, increase your ability to influence others, and increase your ability to fully engage your team to deliver remarkable results.